Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Overrated Film Saturday. And I know Frozen was probably the one film that I think might have might have been some. I could say there is some disagreement that I think could be had in regards to that, as well as some other films that I've mentioned too. And again, pretty much all of the overrated films that I have been mentioning over these uh, months now has mostly been of films that I have liked, but I can say I think they're not as worth. They're not. They don't. I think they're just over exaggerated for what they are. And I think there can be a lot of exaggeration that can be given to films and filmmaking. And I kind of wanted to talk about one of these um, series of films today. And I know by the title, I don't dislike The Hunger Games. I don't think that The Hunger Games are horrible films, or that they don't bring up some interesting commentary. No, but I think that there is this hype to it um, that kind of bothers me a little. There and it's sort of the similar hype that bothered me kind of with Frozen as well. Just to this idea of, ooh, it's really speaking something, when really it just feels to me like it's just another standard film. It's like it's not doing anything new or unique, I think. So without further ado, let me sort of discuss the films. And again, I've seen actually only two of the films. I haven't seen the part one Mockingjay, but literally when they made a part one, I was like, okay, this is another level down for me, because when you look at the lengths of the books, which I did, I haven't read the books, so I'm going into this with my understanding of the films, but I like to critique them too based upon how much source material you have, because really the length of a book can really determine the amount of source material that gets put into a film, um, especially depending on the the details surrounding the film, the book, and really its length, because the length really indicates to you how much needs to be put in or how much can be taken out. But when you already have a smaller book to begin with, it's harder to really extend the length and um, increase the padding. And again, The Hobbit did the same thing. I'm not saying that The Hunger Games is the only film out there that has done this. It is a growing trend now to do this part one installment thing. But immediately when they did that, I was like, no, no, no way. I'm not going to go torture myself with another Hunger Games movie. Um, Especially when it's probably going to bring up the same kinds of problems that we've seen with the other films, or at least, I mean, like the same conflicts, sort of, the whole um, going against the establishment rich people, and that's another thing that I want to talk about that I think is very important to bring up when it comes to this kind of a premise that these films try to address and try to use from the source material. Um, the setup to the story, I think, is really, really glossed over. When they explain within the films how, and this is the thing too, the films don't really explain to you as an audience how this world, the Hunger Games world, or planet. I apologize that the planet has a different name apparently than Earth, but apparently it's supposed to be Earth, but in the future. But I'm just gonna call it Earth for the sake of not confusing myself. But it's basically, Earth is like this, really like, it's like the 1%er thing but to the extreme, like, because you have these rich, wealthy, well-to-do people who sort of control Earth, and then you have all of these other districts. I believe there's 12 of them. I don't know if there was a 13th or something, and then that district got X'd off because they rebelled or something. I think that's from what I can remember, that's what happened. But correct me if I'm wrong. I apologize. It's been a while since I've seen the films. I know the concepts and the structure and the plot and everything surrounding the films, but just these little details of, ooh, how many districts there were, and ooh, how many of this and that, and ooh, what does Katniss kill? I know she kills one person, but again, there's like some, I think, animals that she kills in the beginning or something, but I know the basic storylines and the structures and characters and all that. It's just these certain details I sometimes get mixed up with. But basically, depending on whatever district it was, one district rebelled, and then this resulted in the Hunger Games. And the Hunger Games apparently are when every year there is a fight to the death between all these different districts. So they bring in 2 people from each district, I guess 1 boy and 1 girl. Doesn't really matter, I guess, how old they are. Although, and again, they do emphasize children within this, and this is another thing that kind of bothered me with this movie series, but I'll get to that when I get there. But basically, they say that that's sort of the district, all these districts' punishment for trying to rebel is that they'll have a game and they'll take their own kind to fight against each other in sort of a gladiator style, futuristic, battle arena. And this arena is kind of like a world, it's like almost like a sphere that covers everything and makes it another world, kind of. It's very bizarre, but that's how it works. And yeah, and the thing too about this is and this was my initial thought when looking at this movie. I was like, how in the world did the world become like that? Like, how did these rich, snobby, sophisticatedly goofy, crazy nut jobs get into power? How is that possible? Who let this happen? Like, there's so much a more interesting story if you just figured out what the backstory to the story was. And the author, I think, apparently doesn't really explain this all that well through my research. And the film has a lot of trouble explaining it. It shows us the world. Yeah, it shows us how horrible and how filthy and depressing it is, but it doesn't tell us how really the world came to this point. And I think that's just so important when you want to establish a sort of world around your story, and if you want to make it about this kind of a story. So yeah, I felt like, had they given a little bit more backstory, had they at least explained a little bit more, had they even showcased a little bit what happens in the past with the district. We only hear it in talking. We don't see anything. Then I think we would have had probably a little bit of a stronger product, at least in my opinion, because backstory, I think, is so important, especially when you're trying to establish a world. You're trying to establish that there's this new kind of way of life that did not exist before, and you sort of have to explain how that existence came to be. Or in doing so, provide some sort of detailed commentary onto the various things within the world. And they don't seem to do that. It's just kind of like, yeah, there's poor people, and then there who are farmers and like coal miners and stuff, and then there's evil, rich people who wear Lady Gaga's hand-me-downs. I mean, that's literally all that it shows me. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to the world, I think. There's visuals. Yeah, there's visuals, but there's no really, and there's a little bit of explanation, but it's not really the primary focus, and it doesn't explain it. And I think if you want to create a really established world, you kind of need to give at least a little bit of backstory. And again, this is kind of was my problem with Frozen 2. It didn't give a whole lot of backstory. And the thing with backstory, though, is it enhances our emotional attachment to the characters. It makes us feel sympathetic for the circumstances that they're in because we understand how that came to be. We understand, their history. We understand where they're coming from. And then we know going into the movie, okay, this is the world, this is the story. And it doesn't provide you that whole lot of context. And even my dad was pointing this out, and he's really not picky on movies at all. And he was just like, I don't understand how this world came to be. They don't explain this throughout the entire movie. I'm like, yeah, they really don't. So I think really there needed to be an understanding of how mankind got there, especially onto this level that they showcase it at. Because it's just kind of strange. It just doesn't feel like something that could actually happen. I mean, it doesn't feel plausible to me. Like, I was just looking at this whole thing going, yeah, this is just fantasy. I just don't see how this can be our future. Like, I just don't. If it was maybe on like another planet or something, and maybe they had all these different planets that were called districts or whatever, and there was this one big gigantic planet of evil people who conquered all the other little planets or something like that. Maybe that could hold a little bit more weight, but the fact that the author and the people behind the movie wanted to make it centered around this idea that it is a futuristic Earth. I don't see how that holds any weight. Excuse me, there's just a flag in my way. It's just kind of, I just thought that part of the story was really lacking, and I felt like that kind of needed to be there in order for me to kind of care. But yeah, that was a big issue. And this concept, this idea of, putting people in situations where they don't want to be put in. Wow, we have not seen that before. I've seen this so extensively, even within films that are around this concept of like fighting to the death or going up against somebody that you don't want to go up against. It's like with that Condemned movie, where they have like all these prisoners who they go and have fight to the death, I believe. It's like, it's similar to Gladiator too, he has to go out and he has to, fight all these people, in order to gain a sense of, redemption. It's, this whole, I mean, Gladiator at least brought up a little bit of a different concept, but here it's just like, yeah, okay, they're gonna go fight all off to the death, and yeah, that's just and oh, look at how horrible it is. That's another thing that this film I think tries to push too. It likes to push that envelope there of, ooh, look, you should see how horrible it is. Ooh, look at how horrible they're all, how just deplorably torn, and just they try to paint such a huge tragic effect with the whole thing, and in doing so, that doesn't bring anything new to the table, because we know that it's a tragedy. We know that this is like not fun stuff. We know that this is kind of, awkward to watch. The thing too that makes it even more awkward, I think, is Gladiator and Condemned, they really established themselves as adult films. They said this is for adults, this is for people who can handle the violence, can handle that sense of of that can handle that kind of circumstance. It sort of knew who its audience was, at least. With this film, you know, the problem that I have with it is this. I think the whole concept of kids going out and killing each other is just. I just find it just a horrible message. Like what are you trying? What message are you trying to send? Like that you know, in some future realistic world, someday some kids will have to go off and kill each other. Like what kind of a message does that send? Like it's just very uncomfortable, and it was kind of hard to watch at times, especially when that little girl dies in the first movie. I'm just like, this is just awkward and just strange, and it's not like it doesn't feel like it just feels like so like they're trying to make it more tragic by putting in children or something. Like, ooh, look at how sad this is, this person dying, oh, look, but we don't really the thing is too is we learn maybe a little bit about them, but not really a whole lot, because then they end up getting killed. And it just tries to paint this very, just it's just a very deplorable atmosphere, I mean, that this film creates. It creates a very, very just kind of grotesque atmosphere, at least to me, especially when you're trying to insert children and older people too. That happened within the second movie. An older woman gets killed, and it's just horrible. It's not pleasant to watch. These films just aren't pleasant to watch for me. They don't get me engaged because they're not pleasant or offer really some kind of hope. Even the third one was just like, yeah, okay, her entire district is gone. I'm just like thinking to myself, okay, alrighty. How many more people have to die now? Okay, how many more people do I have to die to emphasize the point that this is a huge, huge, huge climactic tragedy or whatever? It just creates that very uncomfortable, weird, bizarre nature. And again, I mean, I understand if that's what the author was going for and what these films were going for, but it's really not my taste. It just leaves kind of a sour feeling in my mouth. It doesn't give you a sense of like of a of real like strength and struggle, at least to me. Like, I mean, I felt more for maybe someone like Frodo, who was going through something um, deep within himself that he had to overcome in order to, destroy some kind of evil. Um, but with something like this, where you have to actually kill innocent people in order to, you know, get to a safer world somehow, and survive on your own. I don't know. It's very unsettling. It's not something that engages me. It's not something that, um, and again, the film doesn't even approach it through a philosophical perspective. It doesn't look at it and go, what should I do? What should happen? It's just kind of mindless, shaky cam action throughout the entire thing, and it doesn't really take a breather. Or when there are slow parts, they're very dull and they don't really move all that well. Um, and the thing is too is when you have a story like this, you sort of need a compelling character to get you through it all. And to be honest, I think Jennifer Lawrence is fairly bland throughout this film series. I don't think she's as good of an actress as some people say she is. I think she's an okay actress, but I don't think she stands out as being one of the greats, to be honest. I mean, I haven't really seen a whole lot else of her work. So I really can't judge her as an actress on a whole, but I'm saying as an actress within this film series, I find her to be very bland and not interesting. I don't find Katniss interesting. I find her very boring. Um, there's not really a whole lot of development with her. Like, she doesn't really, I don't think she really grows all that much. She's just kind of this stagnant superhero woman. She's like invincible. I mean, yeah, there you see certain parts where she does get injured, or um, she's kind of, struggling, but at the same time, it's in no way this on the same level as um, some of the other characters, and at the same time, I just feel like that she just doesn't have, I think, a whole lot of personality throughout the movies. I think she kind of keeps this similar face throughout. I mean, she does sell the scenes where she has to be a little bit more dramatic. Yeah, then maybe she sells those scenes a little bit more. But beyond that, like, I'm talking her personality. I'm not talking about her actions. I'm not talking about the fact that she can shoot a deer or something. That's. But what I'm talking about her as a character, and I don't think that there is a huge amount of growth to her. I think she stays pretty much the same throughout the first two films. And again, from the trailers, from what I could see for the part one installment, she didn't seem to showcase anything new. To me, she just still stays the same character, um, and doesn't really ultimately. Um, Again, she accomplishes things, but it's all through her actions, um, and nothing really is there, I think, when it comes to personality. She doesn't have a whole lot of personality. She doesn't feel like, she really does feel like one of those loner characters, like one of those characters that you know that she wants to be a loner. I mean, you can tell, like, at some points, like, she does not want to be around people. Um, but at the same time, you're just like, ah, man, you just, and you can tell too that she's really faking it when she has to change at certain points to make herself seem more appeasing to the public. Because again, they sort of showcase the heroes when they're, or the prisoners really, who are supposed to go out and fight and stuff, and people from the capital. That's what they call that evil place, the capital. The capital people basically root for whoever they want to root for, and yeah, I think that was sort of a problem I had, because she didn't really change. She just faked her personality, just in order to get attention so that she could survive. Yeah, so there really wasn't a whole lot of change with her character. There wasn't like a whole lot of um, wait. I think just throughout you can just see the kind of um, horrendous environment that they're in. And I would understand that somebody would probably be a little bit more bland under these circumstances, but you still got to have some kind of personality, especially with such a character that we're supposed to take such a very traumatic journey with. We need somebody who we know is really, um, really fighting for the better. But at the same time, someone with at least a little bit of a personality. She's just, I mean, I almost felt like I was watching a robot. To be honest, I felt like I was watching a robot with maybe a hint of a little bit of something human in there, but not a whole lot. But I felt like I was watching a robot throughout her performance, and the character herself, like the way she presents herself, is just very bland. That's another thing too. She sort of this film tries to use the romance as this sort of like fake, superficial thing, and I find that to be very stupid. Especially when they try to create a love triangle, like, so unnecessary, especially when you can kind of tell that Jennifer Lawrence apparently doesn't even like she didn't even like the two boys apparently she was, or at least one of them that she was working with, because she would put like this, she would like eat something disgusting before she would literally go on camera to go and have a romantic scene with them. That just goes to show you that this person does not want to be in a romantic role and doesn't want to try to sell that. And it's clear that this film didn't do a good job of selling the romance to its audience, I think. And that's a huge, huge weak point, because it is a focus of the story, and it just feels so fake, especially from Jennifer Lawrence's part. It doesn't feel genuine. You don't feel like she's having a romantic connection with any of these boys. You don't feel like she's really going through anything with them. In her mind, I think it's just survive and get back to my family, or she just feels like she's in survival mode throughout the entire movie, and as a result, we don't get a whole lot of personality out of her. And a lot of the other characters too don't, I think, have a whole lot of personality. Heck, even the side characters that appear within the second film have way more personality than Jennifer Lawrence's character. When that one girl, kind of, there's this like awkward scene where there's the one girl who's from another district, and she just goes all out and just starts changing in the middle of an elevator or inside an elevator, and she does it with such, confidence, and you feel like, wow, that person actually has a very out there personality. Like, she's not afraid of what other people think about her. And I just thought that was brilliant, and I thought that was entertaining. But whenever I see Jennifer Lawrence on camera, I'm just like, oh gosh, you just don't have a personality. I'm sorry. I just can't get invested into you. I'm sorry, I can't watch you anymore. So yeah, I don't think she's that interesting of a character. I think she's way too overhyped for what people are saying. But that's just me. I mean, that's just when I'm looking literally on the screen and I'm seeing her face, and I don't really see a whole lot of different character change or whatever. I mean, she's not as bad as somebody like Kristen Stewart. And again, I'm not comparing this in any way, shape, or form to Twilight, and that's the last time I will mention that movie series. But what I am saying is that she still kind of offers that sort of similar bland, uninteresting, uninspiring nature. And it's something that I think we see with female characters, especially when they're placed more within a masculine role. They don't become interesting, they don't become engaging, they don't become fun. I mean, I will though say something like Million Dollar Baby, at least Hilary Swank in that film, I felt at least a little bit more cheery, and she kind of did have a little bit more of a personality. But here, man, Jennifer Lawrence got nothing. I mean, I just find her bland. I just find her just like, she's just Wonder Bread to me. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's another thing. Also, something that I think is very pivotal and central to the film, as well as the story, is this whole idea of pitting rich against poor people. And this plot point has been used countless times. This whole idea that the rich are evil and the poor are the goody two-shoes who've been stomped upon by the rich bad people. And this storyline is so dated. It's so frustrating to watch this storyline, because it's occurred so many times, so many ways. And again, the villains too, who are the rich people, they are probably the most insane, crazy, stupid villains I've ever seen. I mean, they wear Lady Gaga's hand-me-downs. They act all over eccentric and over like Hollywood, you know. They they think like that this thing is like just all fun, and you know, like, yeah, we're gonna watch people die, this is great. It's just it's so weird. It doesn't make any sense really on a human level. Like human beings wouldn't act like this. Like, this is not how human beings would treat other human beings. I mean, yes, there's some evil bad apples in this world, but to say collectively that these collective amounts of people, you know, would buy into this, you know, I just find that to be bafflingly insane. I mean, I just find that to be ridiculous. And I think that's the problem too I have with the villains is they're not that they don't have a lot of there's not a whole lot of interesting things to them. There's not really a whole lot of dimension to them. They're just kind of over the top, flamboyant, and they're like, ha ha ha, yeah, we're gonna kill people, ha ha, yes, it's so fun. So what do you think, Jennifer Lawrence? I think, yeah, blah blah blah. That's her. So you know, it's so annoying to watch that. It's so obnoxious, and it just paints this very black and white picture that I think it's not engaging. It's not interesting. You don't want to root for any of these people. You just want them to all blow up. You want them to all blow up for doing these horrible, horrible games that they do. Like, you don't have any sympathy. They feel like, I almost feel like that these people were like somehow insane because they appear insane. Like, they appear to be enjoying this, and to enjoy this kind of violence on this kind of level is sadistic. It's called being sadistic. So to change a whole society and make everybody on this level is just so beyond me. I mean, I don't know how that would be possible. I mean, it's just unbelievably messed up. And I cannot understand anything behind the villains because they're just insane. And the fact that there's all of these other people who are not showcased but are really the villains too in all this because they support it, you know, they're just insane. That's just it just boggles my mind how insane this story is, and how stupidly over the top and idiotic the villains are. And the problem that I have with pinning the rich against poor people is because there are bad and good apples in every group. You can't just say all poor people are good, and you can't just say all rich people are bad people, or that they don't, you know, help out poor people, or, you know, or that poor people, you know, that there's bad and good apples in every single group of people. You know, you can't just put it in such a black and white premise. And that's what bothers me so much about this movie. I don't like this whole idea of, yeah, we're all rich, and, you know, we're gonna go watch these people, you know, kill themselves, and they're all poor, and they're all poor little peasants there, and you know, it doesn't take into account anything complex. It doesn't take into account anything that is of real substance. Because again, it doesn't really paint anything that actually really happened in history, like with Gladiator. You know, you really do see sort of the political underlinings between some different groups that are involved with the Gladiator games and all that stuff. And you do see certain aspects within the games that do kind of paint little shades of gray, especially with the one character that Maximus comes across and who ultimately ends up having him participate in the games. You know, at least with that, you got a sense of, okay, there is there is this own greedy, selfish motivation that this person has, but deep down he still has that sense of um, true honor and dignity. So there was some dimension there, but not in this world. No, it's either you're a good poor little angel or you're a bad, evil, sadistic rich person. There's nothing really in between, except Woody Harrelson. But again, Woody Harrelson's character is really somebody who was really poor anyway. I mean, he's still poor, I guess you could say, especially if he spends all his time drinking, which he does in the film. Um, and again, Woody Harrelson is probably a way more interesting character than any of the characters that they present and focus on in this movie, because he actually has a past. He participated in the games. He was distraught by the things that he did within the games, and you really do see how he used alcohol as a means to cope. And again, it's not really all that explored all that much, but it is emphasized, but not the focus. And that storyline would have been a whole lot more interesting than Katniss's storyline, where her moral grounds aren't really tested all that much. I mean, she doesn't really you don't feel like she went probably through the weight of what Woody Harrelson went through, especially when you see how the games like literally messed him up so badly. But again, since I haven't seen the third film, I can't say, but I'm not saying that she didn't have any horrible, horrendous impact from it. But what I am saying is I think they could have done that with her character, but they chose not to. And then they chose not to focus on Woody Harrelson, who did have that aspect in there and who they could have focused on instead of her. And I really don't like this black and white, rich against poor, social classes fighting against each other. I think that's just ridiculous. I don't think it serves a purpose, and it's nothing new. It's nothing interesting. It doesn't provide you any bits of shades of gray. Within the story. Yeah, maybe you do see one character. I think she's the one who does like all like the I don't know. She does like something with the outfits and she's sort of the representative, I guess, of Katniss's district, and she becomes a little bit emotional in the second film, but again, you hardly see her. She's hardly there. And most of the time, all of these villains are just, ha 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 ha, we're rich and we got money and we're gonna have these games so these poor people can't be a part of us rich people, and it just makes no sense. It's stupid. I mean, I just find the whole plot of this whole series just to be. I just find a lot of the stuff that's within the plot to be a little bit stupid, and I think doesn't provide something interesting to comment on. Again, there are interesting things that it brings up with this whole idea, but I just think that it's not executed as clearly and as interestingly as it could have been. Now, I am not saying, okay, all right, the best way I can put this is these are my problems with the film as summary. No clear backstory to behind the districts and to behind the world that they try to establish. These concepts of having people compete in games and fighting to the death and doing very gory, horrible things to one another has been seen before, and the trials and tribulations that these characters go through in this film is no different from the ones in the other films. So there's nothing new there. Jennifer Lawrence, and again, not just her, but pretty much the rest of the cast is pretty bland. They don't have a whole lot of personality. They're not all that interesting to watch. Peeta's a nice guy, but it's one of those things where he is kind of weak, and he does stay in sort of that weak role. Again, there's no growth with him either. So, um, huge problem, I think, within this film. So, again, there's that whole thing that bothered me, the execution of the characters and not giving them really a whole lot of depth or personality. Pitting the rich against poor, which is something we've seen time and time again with other films, and they do it completely black and white here. There's no dimensions with the rich people. There's no dimensions with the poor people either. You don't get a sense of you don't get a sense of the real sort of weight um, that something in the real world like this would offer, because there would be some good and bad apples within each place. There wouldn't be this, you know, huge. It just doesn't feel human. It doesn't feel like um, that this could take off on a mass scale, and they don't give these people in the capital, they don't feel human at all. So yeah, there's just nothing there that it has to offer. And again, the villains, like I've said before, the whole concept with the villains of them not presenting a really huge amount of personality, and at the same time being on the level that they are, and having so much people following them and pretty much laughing and giggling at this whole concept that they created, I think is just very sickening, and it's not fun to watch, and I find it disgusting. And I find it just very unhuman, because I just couldn't see humans doing this on a large scale. And again, people might say, oh, there's been times in history where it's been like that. But yeah, nobody was watching it, though, on a TV. And nobody was staying tuned for it, constantly. Unless you count probably the gladiator shows. But even then, um, the even then, still there were a lot of Romans who didn't support the whole showcasing of the shows, and it only happened actually at one point during around Roman history, where they became popular and were showcased. Um, and that's when really Rome was really at its height, I'd say, and had a huge ego. So, those kinds of things, they're presented on a fairly somewhat realistic level. But with this, and how much people have absorbed into it and laugh at it, and think it's like the greatest thing in the world, I just find to be just disgusting and deplorable, and I just can't see how, I just don't see how I just don't see the way in which that these people operate, at least within the capital. It just doesn't make any sense to me, that these people would be so sadistic, and so many people being in the same kind of boat, and allowing it to sort of happen. That's just kind of my understanding. Yeah, they do showcase that one person, that one guy who kind of ends up being sympathetic for Katniss, I think. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's sort of shut down. And again, they don't explore this concept of maybe the people up on top are suppressing the capital people, and they never show that within the film. Maybe they do show that within the book, but it's not within the films at all. And it needed to be a lot more focused on, because there's not a whole lot with these people. And yeah, it's just these movies are just way too strange for me. They're just a little too bizarre, and they bring up some interesting things, but I don't think they're all that unique or new, and I don't think that there's a whole lot that I can say more about it. It's just one of those things where it's just one of those movies where I can understand that there are certain complexities to it, but I don't think it's worth the hype. I don't think it's worth the significant amount of praise that it gets. I just think it's an okay series. I mean, it's definitely not a standout to me. It's not one where I go, wow, that I don't go out satisfied. I just go out going, oh, okay, all right, I saw the Hunger Games, all right. But that's just my opinion. And again, I'm more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say about this, but there was just a lot of things that kind of bothered me, and that I felt were like lazily put together. Um, but there's still some good things in it. Again, too, like I've said before, just this whole concept of having some sort of futuristic kind of game scenario is something that I think is something that could be executed fairly well if done right. There's some interesting commentary on the whole hierarchy of power, but at the same time, I feel like that it does it too black and white, and yeah, that's why I think it ends up suffering. But it brings up some interesting things, but again, the full on execution of it, I don't think is that strong as some people make it out to be. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about this film series. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.